like what's going on in the banking system now. You develop this mentality that's reserve banking, where they only have to keep a small portion of actual assets in their safes and in their vaults, and they can lend 10 times the amount that they have in there, as long as everybody doesn't claim, their share, because there's only 1/10 of what's actually been sold or lent is actually on deposit. Because the idea is not everybody's the economy's good, everyone's, there's a lot going on, and people aren't going to actually claim the asset, because it's more valuable to them to trade the notes. So, because it keeps the society productive. And so this has been going on, and the mentality has developed that, wow, we can do this with everything. We only have to have 1 penny, but we can write debt notes on that penny to the tune of thousands of dollars. And we can charge interest on all these notes that we're sending out. And we're just sitting there holding a penny. That's like, they said the best way to rob a bank is to own one. So it's that the thief mentality, or a mentality that's not, it's just the wrong kind of mentality to develop. It's kind of cheating, and then it just pervades everything. So there are reactions for these things. There are reactions. So the hellish planets and their punishments are there to try to let the living entity make the connection that when I do this, then that happens, so that next time they're in a situation, they can make a better choice. But it's the reward and punishment program. Higher than that is the devotional energy, which is a taste of devotional service to the Lord. There's no need to go through a long rectification process or training and punishment, reward. That's all just completely bypassed by the mercy of the Lord. The Lord, it's an intervention. The Lord intervenes. So, but we're hearing about these hells, and this is how it works. So, the first was about the hell called Rorava, for people who commit violence against living entities. It's unnecessary, but they do it. And in this life, an envious person commits violent acts against many living entities. Therefore, after his death, when he is taken to hell by Yamaraj, those living entities who are hurt by him appear as animals called rurus to inflict very severe pain upon him. Learned scholars call this hell Rorava. Not generally seen in this world, the ruru is more envious than a snake. Wow. So the living entity who committed the violent acts against the living entities was envious. Now those living entities, they come back as rurus, and they have envy also. So it's such a horrible thing. Everybody's caught in this enviousness. And they come back to give pain to this other living entity. So everybody's miserable. The rurus are miserable. The person that did this is completely miserable. Purport. According to Sridhar Swami, the ruru is also known as the Bharashringa. Srila Jiva Goswami confirms this in his Sandarbha. Thus, although rurus are not seen in this world, their existence is confirmed in the Shastras. Well, it must be pretty horrible. So determined. There's like Envy means there's no compassion. Envious of someone, you don't have any compassion for the person that you're envious of. None. You only want one thing, to see them suffer. They just want them to suffer. Envious. Yeah, there's no compassion there. Woo! Text 12. Punishment in the hell called Maharovara is compulsory for a person who maintains his own body by hurting others. In this hell, Ruru animals known as Kravyata torment him and eat his flesh. Whoa. So that would be, you got all your slaughterhouses going. That would be a good example. They maintain themselves by hurting others. So, and then of course you got some of these other kinds of black market things that go on, like, the human trafficking and whatever. They're hurting someone in order to maintain themselves. And you get your drug dealers and stuff, So, they get to be tormented by Rurus who eat the flesh. Whoa. Yeah. Prabhupada's commentary. The animalistic person who lives simply in the bodily concept of life is not excused. He's put into the hell known as Maharovara and attacked by Ruru animals known as Kravyadyas. Okay, so just because someone is ignorant, they may not even be envious. They may just be ignorant, like, these people in the packing houses and stuff, just working all night, chopping these animals up to be shipped to the market the next day. You might say that, they're not necessarily malicious. It's just a job, but this is what's waiting for that. They're not excused because, say, they're ignorant or whatever. They're not excused. Text 13. For the maintenance of their bodies and the satisfaction of their tongues, cruel persons cook poor animals and birds alive. Such persons are condemned even by man-eaters. In their next lives, they're carried by the Yamadutas to the hell known as Kumbhipaka, where they're cooked in boiling oil. Okay, so now you get to see what it's like. That's a famous way to cook these crustacea, these lobsters and stuff. Is things alive, throw it in the boiling water, pump, there it is. It was green, now it's red. Dinner's on. So cruel. Yeah. It says that it's also done to bigger animals and birds. They cook and eat them alive. Wow. Material world, not a very nice place. But here we see the justice is carried out. They go to Kumbhipaka, where they're cooked in boiling oil. Now you get to see what it's like. Text 14. The killer of a Brahmin is put into the hell known as Kala Sutra, which has a circumference of 80,000 miles, which is made entirely of copper. Heated from below by fire and from above by the scorching sun, the copper surface of this planet is extremely hot. Thus, the murderer of a Brahmin suffers from being burned both internally and externally. Internally, he's burning with hunger and thirst. Externally, he's burning from the scorching heat of the sun and the fire beneath the copper surface. Therefore, he sometimes lies down, sometimes sits, sometimes stands up, sometimes runs here and there. He must suffer in this way for as many thousands of years as there are hairs on the body of an animal. All right, the killer of a Brahmin. goes to Kala Sutra. It's made of copper, heated below by fire, and from above by the scorching sun. Burns inside from hunger and thirst, and burns outside from the scorching sunlight above and the burning copper surface below. Wow. He must suffer in this way for as many thousands of years as there are hairs on the body of an animal. It's a very long time in that situation. Killing a Brahmin. Wow. It says here the murderer, so that means with intent. How important are the Brahmins, right? It's Krishna's arrangement. Text 15. If a person deviates from the path of the Vedas in the absence of an emergency, the servants of Yamaraj put him into the hell called Asipatrava, where they beat him with whips. When he runs hither and thither, fleeing from the extreme pain, on all sides he runs into palm trees with leaves like sharpened swords. Thus, injured all over his body and fainting at every step, he cries out, "Oh, what shall I do now? How shall I be saved?" This is how one suffers who deviates from the accepted religious principles. Now, it's interesting. This is in the absence of an emergency. There's a hell called Asipatravan. He runs hither and thither, and runs into palm trees with sharpened swords. Yeah. That's how he's experiencing. He has to run because they're beating him with whips. He has to run to get away from this beating. But he keeps bumping into these palm trees with leaves like sharpened swords. And what does he cry out? "Oh, what shall I do now? What shall I do now? I have no avenue of escape. I can't escape this. And when I try, it just gets worse. How shall I be saved?" So maybe this is a little indication here of what this punishing does. See, even the most hard-hearted, envious, horrible, nasty person intent on causing suffering to other living entities, when they themselves are suffering, then they cry out, "Oh, help me." See? They're forced to call out, "Oh, help me. What should I do?" They have to declare their helplessness. So that to take up spiritual life, you have to ask certain questions like, why am I suffering? Is there God? If there is, what's my relationship? But the first question that usually is asked when one is about to approach spiritual realization is, why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? So you can say, well, you're suffering because you did this bad thing. Oh, okay, then I won't do that bad thing again because I don't want to suffer. That's one way. That's the gradual way. And then another way is, why is that a bad thing? Who's made these laws and rules? Is there something higher than me? Is there a higher authority or something? If so, what is it? Where is it? How do I find it? I don't want to suffer. I don't want these reactions. So that's what is happening here with all this suffering is, why am I suffering? What did I do wrong? Why am I suffering? I won't do it again. Of course, that doesn't always work. Sometimes even when there's intense suffering, and then one back in the same situation, well, it'll be all right this time. So that's there too. But we do see with this suffering, we begin to ask the question, why am I suffering? How can I get out of this suffering? How did I get into it? How can I get out of it? So in this case, this is for someone who unnecessarily deviates from the path of the truth, Vedas, which is the path back home, back to Godhead. Seems to be that sometimes there may be an emergency situation where someone may have to do something that, because of the emergency, that they wouldn't consider doing, that goes against the path back home, back to Godhead, but it's an emergency. What can they do? They have to do it. Or maybe they're shipwrecked or something, and there's nothing to eat except a fish, in the ocean. So they wouldn't ordinarily do it, but it's an emergency. Or maybe something like that. But one who unnecessarily deviates, there's no reason to deviate then from accepted religious principles. They suffer like this. The agents of Yamaraj beat them with a whip, and they run, they can't get away from the pain, and as they run, they bump into these palm trees with leaves like sharp swords. So Prabhupada's commentary. There is actually only one religious principle, Dharmam tu Shakshad Bhagavat Pranitam. The only religious principle is to follow the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unfortunately, especially in this age of Kali, everyone is an atheist. People do not believe in God. What to speak of following His words? The words Nija Veda Pata can only mean one's own set of religious principles. Formerly, there was only one Veda Pata, or set of religious principles. Now there are many. It doesn't matter which set of religious principles one follows. The only injunction is that he must follow them strictly. An atheist, or Nashtika, is one who does not believe in the Vedas. However, if one takes up a different system of religion according to this verse, he must follow the religious principles he has accepted. Whether one is a Hindu, Mohammedan, Christian, he should follow his own religious principles. However, if one concocts his own religious path within his mind, or if one follows no religious principles at all, he's punished in the hell known as Asipatravan. In other words, a human being must follow some religious principles. If he does not follow any religious principles, he is no better than an animal. As Kali Yuga advances, people are becoming godless and taking up so-called secularism. They do not know the punishment awaiting them in Asipatravan, as described in this verse. So the basic principle, as the verse says, deviates from the Vedas, but Prabhupada has expanded that out so that we can understand that that means any of the different scriptures, the bona fide scriptures. But the principle is to follow, not to deviate. And if one doesn't have a set of scriptures and a path to follow, they have to get one. You can't make up your own. You have to get one. So this is the reaction for living not according to any scriptural injunction or deviating from a set of religious principles that tried to have appeared to take shelter of. He says it doesn't matter which one. The idea is that you follow it. Text 16. In his next life, a sinful king or governmental representative who punishes an innocent person or who inflicts corporal punishment upon a Brahmin is taken by the Yamadutas to the hell named Sukaramamukha, where the most powerful assistants of Yamaraj crush him exactly as one crushes sugar cane to squeeze out the juice. The sinful living entity cries very pitiably and faints, just like an innocent man undergoing punishments. This is the result of punishing a faultless person. Yeah. We're not these bodies, we're spirit. So we can experience these things. We know what when we hear this, we can understand the kinds of experiences this is just by hearing. To be squeezed, we know what that feels like. If you haven't done something and you feel all these punishments coming toward you unnecessarily, you know what that feels like. It feels like you're being crushed or squeezed. You didn't do it, but you're being punished for it. So it's a very miserable situation to be in, if you're actually innocent. And the perpetrators of this kind of suffering on someone else, they have to experience what that's like by being squeezed, having the life squeezed out of them. And they cry very pitiably, faint. And that's kind of experience that someone who's punished unnecessarily has that feeling. Helpless, innocent person in that situation experiences like that. So these punishments fit the crime. They sure do. They're very good. They're well fitted. Text 17. By the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, low-grade living entities like bugs and mosquitoes suck the blood of human beings and other animals. Such insignificant creatures are unaware that their bites are painful to human beings. However, first-class human beings, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, are developed in consciousness, and therefore they should know how painful it is to be killed. A human being endowed with knowledge certainly commits sin if he kills or torments insignificant creatures who have no discrimination. The Supreme Lord punishes such a man by putting him into the hell known as Andhakupa, where he is attacked by all the birds, beasts, reptiles, mosquitoes, lice, worms, flies, and other living entities he tormented during his life. They attack him from all sides, robbing him of the pleasure of sleep. Unable to rest, he constantly wanders about in the darkness. Thus, in Andhakupa, his sufferings are just like that of a creature in the lower species. And the question arises here, is he being prepared for a body in the lower species? If he is already experiencing life as it is in those lower species, is he being prepared for that? It's to take birth like that? This question arises. So another question arises, is a mosquito and is biting you, biting your body. You just say, oh, go ahead. You don't know what you're doing. Or is that considered an attack and you can defend yourself? I mean, just because the mosquito is ignorant, I mean, you know, they do carry like malaria and stuff like that. Diseases. Is that considered, get a reaction for that? But here it says maliciously. First-class human beings developed in consciousness know how painful it is to be killed. A human being endowed with this knowledge commits sin if he kills or torments insignificant creatures who have no discrimination. I'm wondering if it's all right to defend yourself from the mosquitoes and the other, consider it an attack. You know, Prabhupada, we never see him kill a bug. I mean, I never heard any story of him killing anything like that. Sometimes he's talking and he's going like this to chase them away. But I never heard of him, you know, reaching up and going. So, Hare Krishna. We should at least be aware that this is not approved activity, and do the best we can not to unnecessarily or to develop the wrong consciousness toward these other creatures, the insects and like that. Krishna. Prabhupada's commentary. From this very instructive verse we learn lower animals created by the laws of nature to disturb the human being are not subjected to punishment. Because the human being has developed consciousness, however, he cannot do anything against the principles of Varnashramdham without being condemned. Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvanyam mayashrishtam gunakarma vibhagasa. According to the three modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the four divisions of human society were created by me. Thus, all men should be divided into four classes, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. They should act according to their ordained regulations. They cannot deviate from their prescribed rules and regulations. One of these states that they should never trouble an animal, even those that disturb human beings. Although a tiger is not sinful, if he attacks another animal and eats its flesh, if a man with developed consciousness does so, he must be punished. In other words, a human being who does not use his developed consciousness but instead acts like an animal certainly undergoes punishment in many different hells. Okay, so from that purport, we see it as the consciousness that the creatures are innocent, but human beings have a tremendous responsibility. Looks like that responsibility extends to all the living entities, the spiders, the ants, the mosquitoes. Everybody plays a part in this world. Everyone has their little service to do. These creatures are not malicious. They are just acting according to the laws of material nature. So, maybe we'll get some clarity on the mosquito issue.